Hey guys, it's Frank from Leap. Today we're going to be talking about this beautiful animal right here, the gargoyle gecko, Rhacodactylus auriculatus. This is one of the species of geckos from New Caledonia, like the crested gecko, or Leachianus, or Chahua gecko. This is probably the second most popular species of New Caledonian gecko behind the crested gecko, and for very good reason. They make wonderful pets. They're beautiful animals. This is one of my solid red males. If you come on in here real quick, you can see just how deep, beautiful red this animal is. They come in oranges, blacks, whites, grays, browns, sometimes even yellow. Very variable. Manageable size, not too big, easy to handle. Most are non-aggressive, fairly easy to feed and keep. So stick around and find out how I do that. So let's talk about the habitat, how we actually keep this animal. I'm keeping this one single male in a 22 wide, 17 inches deep, and 18 inches tall Leap habitat. Now, if you can go bigger into say something like this, a 22 by 17 by 24, or even a 22 by 17 by 36, even better. But this size does work for one individual animal. If you're keeping a pair or a group, then definitely go bigger than this one, but this works just fine for a single animal. Let's open it up and take a look at the inside. So I do have it fully planted and bioactive. It's full of Leap living earth substrate, leaf litter. We want lots of thicker branches because they are a fairly heavy-bodied gecko. There's our guy in there in the plants, so they can climb on that. But I do also like to use, I think thinner branches are underutilized in gecko terrariums. They will crawl on those as well. Cork flats and rounds at different angles and on the ground for them to hide in. And then I do think that live plants are a necessity. I mean, you can use plastic plants, but they're sterile, they're prone to getting dirty, harder to keep clean. They don't produce oxygen, they don't produce humidity, on and on and on. It's just much better to have a more naturalistic setup like this. It's so much less work, it looks much better, as you can see. Let's talk diet. Gargoyle geckos are omnivorous, which means that they eat both animal and plant matter. I do feed them a pretty even mix of both live insects like crickets and dubia roaches, as well as prepared gecko diets. Now, the New Caledonian geckos have some of the best gecko diets out there. Pangea and Rapashi make good gecko meals. That is just a powder that you mix with water and feed the animals. I feed my adult gargoyle geckos 3 times a week, maybe 4, and I pretty much just alternate between prepared gecko diet in a cup and live insects. I do dust most of my feeder insects with a pure calcium powder, and then occasionally with a vitamin supplement, let's say like with Rapashi Calcium Plus. Parameter 1 of the Leap philosophy is lighting, and I do provide lighting in 2 different ways for my gargoyle geckos. First, with a LED high output plant growth bulb. You can see how well these plants are doing. Simulates natural daylight, doesn't produce too much heat. And then in the back, I have another fixture, a Leap T5 high output fixture that does produce ultraviolet light. I do use the Leap 5.0 bulb. They should be provided with UV light. A lot of people don't keep them with it, and they are very hardy animals, and for the most part, they'll be okay without it, but they do bask and utilize that light, and it is much more natural and has been proven to be beneficial for both nocturnal and diurnal animals, so I do provide it. In general, I provide a photoperiod of 12 hours on and 12 hours off. Now, I do simulate seasonal change throughout the year. It does help with breeding, and it's just what is natural for them. In the winter time, I'll maybe reduce the daylight to about 10 hours a day, and in the summer, maybe 13 or 14 hours a day. Not strictly necessary to do that, but it is more natural to provide a natural rhythm. Parameter 3 is heat. One of the easiest things about gargoyle geckos is they usually don't require any supplemental heat beyond the daylight and UV lighting that we provide them. They don't really need an extra basking bulb unless your house is very cold. In general, you want to shoot for a hot spot of around 78 to 80 degrees. If it gets slightly more than that, it's no problem. But you do want to avoid very warm temperatures with these animals. They don't like it hot. Right? High 70s to low 80s at a maximum. But then also there should be a gradient in the enclosure. If you get down lower, it's cooler, in the low 70s. Similar temperatures at night is okay, like around 70 degrees. Dropping down to 60 degrees isn't a problem. I try to keep it no lower than 65 degrees at night. 65 to 70 at night, 70 to 75 ambient temperature is pretty perfect during the day. Parameter 4 is water. I do primarily provide water in the form of a misting system. Here you can see the leak nozzle right here. Your leak habitat does come with punch outs, which you can put in nozzles right here. Here you can see one. This is on an automatic timer where it comes on several times a day, usually in the morning, in the evening, and sometimes at night. You do have to vary that depending on your conditions. Some rooms and homes are drier than others. I do provide a shallow water bowl as well, so they will utilize that. So make sure that has clean, fresh water at all times. And then the automatic misting system, or you can mist by hand, but you do want to provide them with a rainfall, a simulated rainfall. Parameter 5 is humidity. They are semi-tropical lizards and they do like pretty high humidity. You want to aim for around 60 to 80% humidity during the day and 80 to 100% humidity at night. It can be difficult to achieve in some homes with our heating and air conditioning. It does dry things out. So the automatic misting does help with that. You can also use a leak fogger in the mornings, in the evenings, and at night to increase the humidity. Another little hack that you can do is here I have a thin piece of plastic which has been cut to fit over the screen on the top, so that does greatly reduce the airflow and keep the humidity in. Now, I'm not completely covering up the top because I do want some ventilation. I want to seal these things up. Fresh air is important. And also, you notice I do have a notch cut out right here. This notch right here is to allow the UV light to penetrate into the terrarium so the gecko can utilize it. You need to understand that ultraviolet light is blocked by most plastics and most glass. So using plastic or glass on top will block your UV light. So make sure you do cut out at least a section over a basking branch if the animal can still utilize that UV light when it feels the need to. Let's talk handleability and gargoyle geckos as pets. So as I mentioned earlier, they do make wonderful pets. One of the very best pet reptiles you can own due to their ease of care, moderate size, and if you work with them, ease of handling. You know, there's not many gargoyle geckos that are very flighty and aggressive. Some are, but most are relatively calm. They do hop a fair amount, so be very careful. I'm making sure to have my hands underneath them. And you don't, in general, you don't want to keep them too high above the ground in case they do jump. You don't want them to fall too far. For the most part, it's relatively easy to do. Be mindful of their tails, that they will fall off if they're pinched. Unlike crested geckos, though, their tails do grow back, although usually not as attractive. So just be careful when handling. Don't grab the animal. Don't force handling too much on them. You see, I'm not restraining him. I'm just kind of letting him hop around and letting him, guiding him on my hands. And just don't force the interaction, and you can have yourself a really socialized, fun pet lizard. Last, guys, we'll talk about difficulty. I would classify gargoyle geckos as a beginner reptile, one of the very best pet reptiles that you can own due to their ease of feeding, relatively modest size, and handleability, and very long lives. They can live 20, 30 years, no problem. So these do make one of the best beginner pet reptiles. They do require high humidity and some live insects is best for them, but for the most part, really fairly simple reptile to take care of. Hey guys, I really hope that you enjoyed learning about gargoyle geckos, seeing how I take care of them. They're just a wonderful species. We will have many more care videos in our Leap library, so be on the lookout. If you have any suggestions, just put them in the comments or shoot me a message. See you next time.